welcome to a new build guide. So this is going to be for 3.17. This is going to be a DancingDervish Chains of Command build that I threw together that is really cool, and I really haven't seen anybody do this yet. So the concept of the build is you have a DancingDervish and you have a Chains of Command. So DancingDervish gives you it triggers level 15 Manifest DancingDervish on Rampage, and then it disables your weapon, right? Chains of Command, trigger level 20 Animate Guardian's weapon when he kills an enemy, and it says you cannot have non-animated minions. Dervishes don't count as your minions, so you can actually run both of these together. So I'll do a map showcase here. Let's do a primordial pool map because that's the highest tier that I have. And I guess I'll talk about it a little bit while we run through this tier 14. Alright, so essentially the build concept is this. You're going to use Cyclone to trigger your Rampage, and then you're just going to walk. Your Animate Guardian, we have given him Feeding Frenzy, so he'll go attack stuff. And he'll make his own weapons. So as you can see, we're going to Cyclone into the first pack here. We're going to damn near die because I got stunned. And then we're just going to walk. And you can see that our sword is just going to kill everything. And we can pop boxes and kind of just do really whatever. And then if we get to a tougher enemy, we do have a manually casting Frostbite Curse that we can use. And you'll notice that our Rampage is getting refreshed from kills automatically, so we don't have to ever Cyclone again unless we lose Rampage. So, I wouldn't say this is like the fastest mapping build this league, but it's not far behind. It's pretty safe, because as you can see, I just kind of walk away from stuff, and my minions auto-target it. And then with the Rampage, we're getting some really nice helpful things going off with that, such as like DD and the red things that you just seen shoot out. So it's, I mean, altogether it's a pretty decent build for the gear and what I've invested into it. So we'll go ahead, and I'm trying to find the boss here so I can show you a little bit of single target, because that is kind of where this build lacks. And I don't know if it's basically my gear is why it's lacking in single target, or if it's just the skill, like it's not a good single target build. That was a pretty good lag spike. And so let's go ahead and go in the boss here, and we'll drop a TP. And you'll notice that we're still getting Rampage even though we're not technically killing anything, and that is because when our swords hit a rare or unique enemy, they auto refill their duration. So we can just kind of walk around and dodge stuff, and the boss is dead. And that was a tier 14 map. So, I'm going to let my buffs expire, and I'm going to show you kind of how, let's say you go into a boss fight, you lose Rampage. Well, you kind of have two choices. You can either, A, you can drop a Writhing Worm Flask and try to hit the worms, but your Animate Guardian is probably going to do it for you. Or, you can just Cyclone into something. You don't actually have to kill anything with Cyclone to trigger your Rampage. You just have to hit it enough times to get Rampage. And then there you go, it started again, and you're back to killing. So, let's go ahead and go talk gears. Two mandatory uniques that the build, I guess there would technically be three, that the build revolves around. And that is the DancingDervish, your Chains of Command, and then Triad Grips. So Triad Grips, if you don't know what these do, it gives you a little bit of armor and ES, and then depending on the socket color, it converts your minion damage to a different element. So if you got 4 red, it converts 100% of fire. 4 blue is lightning, green is cold. So I'm converting to cold. That is why I'm running the support gems I'm running inside of both of these. If you're running 4 red, you could just run different support gems. I really don't think it matters. In my opinion, cold damage is a little easier to scale. If you get 4 white and you can convert 100% to chaos, that's probably going to be a lot better than what I have. So, You're going to get a Dancing Dervish. This does not need to be linked at all. Mine just happens to be 5 linked. This is how it dropped on the ground. I've dropped like 6 of these this league. What you want to go for here is you want to go for his high attack speed and fizz damage. That's your 2 rolls. But you want more fizz damage. You want the highest fizz damage you can get because we're converting fizz to cold. So the more fizz we can get as a base, the more elemental damage we can do. So I want to jump in here for a second just to mention something. So whenever you manifest your Dervish and you start your rampage stacks, it takes a copy of the sword that you have. So if you gem swap in the middle of a fight, or if you have them up and you swap gems, they do not get the new gem modifier until they die out and you resummon them. It essentially takes a copy of your sword. So kind of keep that in mind when you're picking out your gems and you're picking your sword. And that's why I mentioned look for a really high attack speed, is because it takes a copy of that sword the instance that you trigger Rampage. Your chains of command, for this you want as much life and armor and ES as you can get. I would, depending on what you need, I would prioritize life. This I bought for 2 chaos, so. And then your triads, whatever you can get with these, it really, I mean, the only role that matters is your armor and energy shield. The minions, freeze and shocking, that really doesn't matter. So, the easiest way to get triad grips that are off color like this is you need to go get you a pair of triad grips, which I don't actually have. I'll use this ancient skull for an example. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to your crafting bench. You're going to socket this to be two sockets. You're going to get it green. You're going to go to 3 until you hit your 3rd green. If not, go back to 2 and keep doing that. And eventually you'll hit all 4 green. Over that, let's go ahead and look at the passive tree. It's your bog standard minion build. You take a bunch of minion nodes and a bunch of life nodes. Nothing really special, no cluster jewels, nothing to write home about. I'm running a ton of ghastly eye jewels, so any fizz damage or any like base elemental damage or any cold damage that minions do works. So even stuff like this is a perfect jewel. It's got fizz damage, we got a hinder, we got a little bit of lightning damage. This one we got attack and cast speed, we get a little bit of chaos damage. This one here, we got taunt, cold damage, blind. The taunt is really good because that will essentially make the enemy only attack your minions, or have a higher chance to attack your minions. And then the blind just makes them deal less damage to us. And then I'm also running if I can mouse over it, a Fragile Bloom. I'm running this because I found it and it looked cool. I really don't think this does much at all, quite honestly. I paired it with the node, I think it's, where is it? Is it here? Yeah, the regenerate 2% of life while moving. So as I'm walking, I'm regenerating life. And then here is, I'm regenerating more life if I have fragile growth. So, pretty simple tree. As far as Ascendancy, I would almost play this as an occultist instead, so you could have curses. But if you want to play this as a necromancer, I would go mindless aggression, unnatural strength, because that's going to give your animate guardian +2. I would go commander of darkness for the Ellie resist and attack speed. And then you could go bone barrier if you want. I went mistress of sacrifice because I was playing with offering skills. But quite frankly, I got tired of manually casting them. So, this really does not matter. Your 4th Ascendancy. Bone barrier, I would go bone barrier. One more thing here is, if you have a darkness and throne, I would run that. The reason I'm not is I need the cold res off this belt. So, but you could run 2 more ghastly eyes in your darkness and throne. That would be just as good. We'll go over gem leaks, and then we'll go over him. So, I'm running a Frostbite, which is just a manually casting curse, Flame Dash, and then I'm running a Hatred with Generosity. If you have 4 red triads, run Anger with Generosity. Just whatever damage, elemental damage your minions are doing, you need to run an aura with Generosity for that element. I'm running a Cyclone with faster attacks just so I can hit a little faster and proc that Rampage. And then I have a Desecrate, again because I was running Spirit Offering, you don't actually need this gem. Then we have our Animate Guardian. So on our Animate Guardian we have Feeding Frenzy, so that way he'll go attack stuff. And then we have a minion life just to keep him alive, because I've had 2 die so far. Which, I should note, you either want to anoint or path to Indomitable Army to get moving while bleeding doesn't cause minions to take extra damage, because he will, if he gets hit with bleed, he will walk around and kill himself. I guess I should have noted that a little better. And then the last slot I have a Determination, which just gives me armor. Next thing I'm running in the Dancing Dervish. So I'm running Pulverized support for the AoE, and we get more melee damage. I'm running elemental damage with attacks because we're converting to elemental. Running minion damage, and then hypothermia and ice bite. These are because I'm converting to cold. Obviously, again, if you're converting to fire, run 2 red gems. If you're running lightning, run 2 lightning support, whatever. And then I'm running a damage on full life because our dervishes don't actually lose life. They're always on full life, so that's just a more damage multiplier. Now, there is something you can run in here, is multi-strike. And this actually does proc, according to everybody that I've asked on Reddit, on the Path of Exile forums. It's a bug, but the dervishes do actually count as a hit, so you can run multi-strike in here. Next thing in the chains of command, again, hypothermia. If depending on what element you're converting to, run a support for that. Feeding frenzy, that just makes them go attack stuff. By the way, your dervishes automatically go attack stuff. They're automatically aggressive. You don't need to run a feeding frenzy in them. Next thing I'm running is a minion damage because they are tagged as minions. Elemental damage with attacks, multi-strike, and then a melee fizz, which just gives us more fizz damage to scale off of. So, pretty simple. The other gear is just rares. And then I'm running an Astromantis because, you know, who just doesn't want 120 attributes? You just don't ever have to worry about attributes. Alright, so this is going to be the Animate Guardian gear. So, I can't actually show you what my Guardian's wearing because there's no inventory or anything. Once you put it on him, you can't get it back. So, just to go over prices here, Dancing Dervishes, they're like 5 chaos if you're in Trade League, if you want to buy one. Your chains of command, again, are about 4 or 5 chaos. They don't need to be linked. Any support you put in them will work. So, Animate Guardian. Let's start with the helmet here. So, there's 2 things you can run with him that I found. Is you can run a Leer Cast, which is going to give him a little bit of reduced damage, but it's also going to give nearby allies 15% increased damage. Our Guardian doesn't actually do a lot. Once he triggers his weapons and gets to max stacks, he doesn't actually do a lot of damage. It's the weapons that do damage. So this is just a more multiplier for them. And then he's getting some life. Alternatively to that, if you're not scared that he's going to die, like I am, and you want to, you know, go up a little higher, you could run something like Crown of the Tyrant. So, again, this is something like our Triad Grips, where it's going to kind of help us, in a sense. So, what you're going to do is you want to 4-socket these to whatever color. I've been told this works, but I don't know. I've never actually tried this because I'm not paying an Exalt just to test it. But essentially, it's going to add flat damage per whatever color socket. I would run it for the -10 all res, which would be nice, and it gives him a little more life. I've not really seen a need to go to this. Again, for the pricing, it's whatever. For body armor, again, we've got 2 choices here. You can either run an Ambush Charge, which are super cheap, and that's essentially going to give him a bunch of armor, ES, life, LE res, and then a little bit of life regen. The Endurance Charges is okay. I've never really seen that come up too much. I don't think our Guardian gets hit very much, so I've never really seen that come up. Again, if you want to go a little higher, though, you can run a Doppelganger's Guise. These are about 90 C. So what this is going to do is it's going to give a insane modifier. So if we go ahead and look up what an insane modifier is. Alright, so if we go ahead and look up what insane is, it's a more crit multi, and it explodes corpses while they're insane. And that's kind of cool, but it requires you to run another unique, which we run anyway, and that is the Gloves of Gravebind. So what Gravebind says is nearby enemies killed by anyone count as being killed by you instead. So if you run the Gravebind gloves with a Doppelganger's Guise, everything explodes when they die, because everything is technically being killed by our Guardian. This is actually something I'm going to go ahead and swap to. It also gives a life regen, fizz damage, or a less fizz and chaos damage taken, and a little bit of crit multi. Which that brings us onto the gloves. Gravebind gives you a ton of armor and evasion, a little bit of life on kill, some chaos res, and then the enemies killed count as his. So that brings us into the weapon. And you can run pretty much whatever you want here. A cheap one to run is an Aziri's Disfavor. Basically, we want something that either has a bunch of fizz damage or a bunch of LE damage. The two examples I have here are Aziri's Disfavor, which I did run with him, and personally I like Disfavor quite a bit on this because you get to see a bunch of little Disfavors floating around, which I absolutely love the art for these. So again, it doesn't matter if it's corrupted, because we're just giving, none of this gear matters if it's corrupted, if it's socketed, linked, because it's all going on the Guardian. If you want to run something with Elemental, you can run something like I'm running with a Void Forge, and it's just going to give you fizz damage, and then it's going to give 300% of fizz damage as a random element. I wouldn't run something like Starforge, just because we're converting Elemental, or we're converting to Elemental in this build, so we don't really want to run a Starforge. You could run something like a Terminus-esque if you want to do frenzy charges. It's kind of up to you. You want to craft a really high DPS sword or axe or whatever, you could go that route. Alrighty, well, I think that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I know I did ramble quite a bit there, but there will be a Path of Building link in the description, which kind of explains stuff a little slower, and you can kind of read it at your own pace. Be sure to read over the notes section, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.